Today, so we got some news coming out of the old Soviet bloc. Ukraine has been attempting to pass their own medical marijuana legislation here for a few months. Actually, it really goes back a few years. Their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, talked about approving medical marijuana as far back as 2019 on his presidential campaign trail. In 2022, in February of last year, Russia, of course, invaded Ukraine, throwing the country into a tumultuous war. So that kind of brought this issue back to the surface, especially with regard to treating people that have war injuries and pain and PTSD. So the bill finally was approved by the country's single house legislature a couple weeks ago and is now pending signature by the president himself. Unfortunately, the opposition party leader, it's in English, it's the Fatherland Party. In Ukrainian, I'm going to butcher this, Batyshkina Party. They have blocked the legislation from being signed into law, and a lot of their talking points here are the same tired drug war talking points that we've heard, saying that it's about drug cartels trying to find their way into Ukraine, saying that it's bad for teenagers and children, and a number of other, talking points that we've heard for years. The president is standing behind this bill and is insisting that this is just a predicted setback and that this was always going to happen, and that they'll be able to the parliament will be able to supersede that block, and eventually it will get sent to the president's desk. As of right now, Ukraine allows medical marijuana to be used to treat epilepsy and cancer, but this bill would expand it explicitly to PTSD and would also allow for public hearings to hear it for treatment for other options as well. Ukraine, one last point, I think it's interesting that Ukraine has taken an approach to legalizing and regulating medical marijuana, which is in stark contrast to their oppressive neighbors, who, as we know, have been jailing U.S. citizens for possessing small amounts of THC and other cannabis products, including Brittany Grenier and I'm blanking on the name of the other gentleman that's locked up right now that we're waiting to come home. But so it's I think encouraging to see that Paul Whelan, that's right. Thank you, Luke. I think it's encouraging to see that a part of the world that's traditionally had a more conservative view on cannabis and drug use in general is at least starting to have that conversation and change their laws, and hopefully other former Soviet bloc countries, continue down the same path. I'm interested in hearing, what everyone else has to say.
I think ultimately this is going to get passed. I think this is just part of their whole little process, and they needed a headline to come out for the opposition to steer them, so they felt like they were getting their their just desserts and whatnot. But I think ultimately this is going to go through like you stated.
Yeah, I think it'll be a boom for the country as well. It's agriculture is one of the largest industries in Ukraine. They're one of the largest rice producers and exporters in the world. So I think it could do a lot of good for their economy as well.
That is true, but it's going to depend
absolutely.
On how they regulate
And
it. Go ahead, Minnie.
I mean, yes, absolutely. Of course it does. But think about, any country that's going through some of the things that they've gone through recently is going to have a tremendous surge of individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder and all kinds of different things. They've been exposed to so much trauma recently. And so this would be huge progressive movement on behalf of the people there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I think
one of the biggest cannabis producing countries in the world. 200 years ago and up until hemp was taken out of commercial production, Russia just produced more hemp than any place else. Our War of 1812, a lot of it had to do with us smuggling hemp out of Russia, because there's big shipbuilding, canvas, rope making thing. There's a lot of hemp tradition and cannabis tradition in the area. It was suppressed by the Russians, but it's there. People remember it. And, hot hemp has been available. Smoke a little bit, and grandma just has a good night's sleep.
What were you going to say, Luke?
Yeah, on a personal note, I do hope they get better cannabis, because the stuff I got when I was in Ukraine was not good.
Oh, you got some of that boof, huh?
Got some of that breadbasket OG.
I may or may not have had a couple packs live resin carts with me too.
Oh man, Luke, did you have something on this?
Yeah, it's just, I think that
to make cannabis available to people with PTSD, I think is extremely important. I think it's one of the really overlooked conditions that cannabis can be really, really beneficial for. You know, I know that, like, you know, the first things that come to our mind are cancer and AIDS and, you know, and HIV and, you know, some of the more terminal, you know, headline making ailments. But, you know, just the way cannabis can help and benefit the person that experiences PTSD and able to kind of get around and look at their problems or their issues at a different angle or kind of overview, I think is extremely helpful. I think that we're going to see tremendous leadway made in that sense. And just shout out to Ukraine for doing this and trying to look out for the people who kind of fought on their side. And, you know, I'm not taking, you know, you can get political and everything, but these people sacrificed for their country and are looking for a way to be able to heal and get better and reintegrate and become productive citizens again. And I applaud them for that. I applaud them for the courage of doing that. In the aspect of just like all the breakthroughs of medical cannabis too, and to what Dale said, what's been going on in that area of the country for so long. I can't remember the species of cannabis that used to come out of, I want to say it was rubus or rubius.
Ruderalis.
Yeah, thank you. I hadn't said it in so long that but that specific species was indigenous to that area, and so it has a long history with cannabis. Ukraine being the almost breadbasket of that entire area too. Obviously, it's going to be huge in an agricultural area. So, you know, shout out to Ukraine and what they're doing.
Yeah, and one more thing to what you said, Luke, about PTSD. I think one thing that's overlooked, I feel like PTSD is one of the most common ailments that people unconsciously or subconsciously self-medicate for. Is even in the US, you know, it's people don't realize that that's why they're smoking so much, especially you look in the inner city where people experience gang violence on a day-to-day basis growing up. Like, there's been a lot of studies that have been done to show that whether it's, you know, codeine cough syrup or cannabis or whatever it is, that's a lot of, you know, unconscious self-medicating happening. So unfortunately, that's probably going to happen in Ukraine regardless once they overcome this war right now. So I think it's very beneficial that their government is trying to provide some type of treatment for them through illegal means.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's like proactively approaching the inevitable, you know, opioid addiction from a lot of these folks, like later on?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that angle.
Yeah. Most definitely. We're going to keep this train rolling.